Ladies and gentlemen, as you can see, I am seated amidst giants, and I'm going to ask, what school is this?
This is the Alliance High School.
The Alliance High School, right. These giants have in the past couple of weeks done their research, they have grown, and they have learnt a lot. But most of all, they have debated. And today, we begin the final mile to determine who will be the last debater standing. This is the Debate Circle, your home of high school debates, and I am your host for the day, Stephanie Washera. The motion for debate today is whether reinstituting Pan-Africanism and its policies will lead to socio-economic growth in Africa. Proposing this motion, we have the Alliance High School, and opposing this motion, we have WAA Boys. May the best team win. First proposer, the floor is yours.
The forces that unite us are intrinsic and greater than the superimposed influences that keep us apart. Therefore, in our unity, we join to propose the motion that reinstituting Pan-Africanism and its policies will lead to socio-economic growth in Africa. Pan-Africanism never failed, it only served its primary purpose and faded away. And in this case, Team Proposition believes that reinstituting it as it was before will now lead to socio-economic growth. I would proceed to my first point. Africa, as a whole, has a lot of factors that have led to its underdevelopment that has limited social and economic growth. For example, irresponsible and irresponsive leadership, mismanagement of funds, lack of respect for democratic ideals, illiteracy, over-reliance on foreign aid, just to state a few. And in this case, it begs the question, who or what is going to save us? Yes, we look up to the hills, and where does our help come from? Our help comes from the Lord. And we look up to the hills of Kilimanjaro and the hills of all the other mountains in Africa, and realize that united as a stand, we shall stand, and divided as a front, we will fall. Therefore, how exactly will Pan-Africanism lead to social and economic growth? One of the main objectives, or rather one of the resolutions of Pan-Africanism, was African intellectuals were urged to play an important role in the fight for independence, as it was at that time. Keep in mind that it was at that time. Therefore, in this case, we are not bringing Pan-Africanism in 1945, but we are bringing it with a new persona, with a new face, and fresh ideas. Therefore, in this case, we are going to revamp, or rather we are going to bring our scholars who are outside. Because remember, our founders from W.E.B. Du Bois to Jomo Kenyatta, Kwame Nkrumah, George Padmore, Peter Abraham, all these were scholars who are outside. And the reason we are going to do this is bring these people back, because they are the technocrats. They have seen the development of Africa. And as Africa staggers in irresponsive and irresponsible leadership, we are going to bring them back through the Africa Leadership Academy. Keeping in mind that we are going to train you on how exactly you're supposed to reason and how exactly you're going to use your factors of production as interested in mature politics and incentivizing of private investment. Therefore, this is our stand. This is our African country. This is our African bloc. Let us own it through Pan-Africanism. Thank you very much.
First proposer, the floor is yours.
Reinstituting Pan-Africanism and its policies will lead to social economic growth in Africa. I, Harun Zero, from the great WAA, humbly express my thanks for your interest in this. I stated I am standing against the motion. As my lead opponent predicted, I'm going to say that's right, because it is a crashing response to their position. I give him a full credit for disagree with the motion and attempt to blunt its impact. But here is the rubber meets the road. His effort misses the mark for the following reasons. In fact, we can't fall. There is nothing to fall us. But we will be compiling queues in Africa. This will lead to violations of the rights to life and physical integrity and inadequate standard of living, and health, as well as elevated risk of arbitrary detentions, torture, and refoulement. This is a report by experts of United Nations News. Also observed that discrimination against foreign nationals in South Africa, this clearly shows that uniting Africa will lead to xenophobia. Also, we will have a continent which is understood because many Africans, we are lacking legitimacy and accountability. These are at the root of many African conflicts. Reflecting an inability of this political system to accommodate participation and power sharing. In fact, this will be like we are introducing ourselves in a big problem because in Africa, there is a lot of social injustice. Let us first criticize our Kenyan government for not having feelers for the challenges facing the citizens. First, let us have a limelight to ourselves first, than insisting that we unite Africa. Thank you very much for giving me a word.
Second proposal, you have 3 minutes to make your case.
If you want to achieve fast results, act alone. But if you want to achieve sustainable results, act collectively in the spirit of Pan-Africanism. The first opposer came and factually everything he gave us was incorrect. He came and told us that Africa is lacking accountability. He said that Pan-Africanism will degrade power sharing. He said that first we should sensitize and criticize the Kenyan government. What about Somalia? What about Uganda? What about Malawi, which actually has the lowest GDP in Africa? What they want to do is make Kenya maybe another country, another superpower. But what happens to the low-life country, actually the 10th world country? They do not recognize the amount of substance that we as Pan-Africanism hold. Many of us sit at our television sets, blaming the iniquity of social wars, blaming the iniquity of hunger, starvation, and then we sit comfortably in our chairs thinking we have to do nothing about them. This is what Pan-Africanism comes to solve. They tell us nothing that can give us social and economic growth in Africa. Absolutely nothing. They bring no solution to the table. We bring Pan-Africanism. The same Pan-Africanism that was founded by our forefathers since 1897, and 5 congresses later became what we see today. Each and every time it outlived its purpose, the policies were changed. In 1900, they had purposes. They were accomplished. Pan-Africanism accomplished this. It is again, even up to 1945, 5 times. What are they giving us that has actually worked? They're not giving us a structure that has a stable government, a stable leading psychology that can lead us to social and economic growth. I believe that rethinking Pan-Africanism will provide numerous benefits to the continent. First, we must be careful about the implementation of the neo-Pan-African ideology, because the current global dynamics do not allow us to stay in this archaic decision that they're putting us in. We are bringing food to the table. They are saying, you know what? Let us sensitize this government. With what? We have technocrats who have come from many different countries, who have gone outside and experienced the lavish life, the amazing fruits of labor that we can get. The first proposer came and told you, we want fresh solutions. Let's digest that quickly. Yeah? What we really need, as my first proposer mentioned, is the sense of unity that Pan-Africanism builds. Pan-Africanism was able to liberate an entire continent from colonial rule. However, we were left with only social and economic factors to think about. It never failed. Why should it fail now? Many presidents around the world are giving conscience to Pan-Africanism that it can work. Our own president, all the presidents of East Africa and Central Africa are giving assurances that Pan-Africanism will work. And the statistics have shown the next president in 50 years of the Republic of Kenya also thinks that Pan-Africanism will work. Which president, you ask? His name is Selvin Gishuki. Thank you for your time.
Second opposer, you have 3 minutes.
Optimism is the faith that leads to achievement. Nothing can be done without hope and confidence. I'm Ali Hamisi from the Great WAA Boys High School, here in front of you to greatly oppose the motion which states reinstituting Pan-Africanism and its policies will surely lead to socio-economic growth in Africa. I would like to start by correcting my fellow debater from the proposer side The first speaker here just stated that Pan-Africanist leaders, they helped in fight independence in African countries. What I want to tell him is that the Pan-Africanist leaders such as Kwame Nkrumah, Milton Obote, and other leaders, they tried to fight against Pan-Africanism, but some members from such countries were not in support of them, and some members from the African states, they did not fully support the organization or the idea of Pan-Africanism, and this led to the death of some of the Pan-Africanist leaders. The second proposer has just stated earlier that the Pan-Africanism, it has really helped in improving our economic in Africa. What I want to tell him is that, remember, the organization that came up with the idea of Pan-Africanism, it was not only in Africa, but the organization or the idea, it was back in the US. They were fighting for the rights of the black people in the US, in the European nations, and not in African states. Firstly, I would like to state that reinstituting Pan-Africanism, it will lead to insecurity among African states. Why am I saying so? Let us take a good example of Somalia. Somalia being the neighboring country of Kenya in the northeastern side. In Somalia, in places such as Garissa, Mandera, Wajir, and Isiolo, we have conflicts which are taking place in these areas. And recently there have been growing number of attacks this year in areas such as Mpeketoni attacks and Likoni attacks. So as a result, if we unite the African states with each country having its own chaos and its own problems, it's like we are going to invite all the problems and all the chaos, and we are not going to be able to resolve the conflicts in Africa. Secondly, there will be it will lead to difference in views and opinions among the African leaders. Why am I saying so? Remember, in the Pan-Africanism movement, we have different leaders from different African states. So when these leaders come on table and agree on something, maybe some leaders will have this opinion and the other one will have different opinion, of course. So by having this, it will lead to misunderstanding of the Pan-Africanism members, that this will lead to social conflicts among the Pan-Africanist members. The other point is that there will be suspicion and mistrust among the members. This, I've earlier stated that the Pan-Africanist leaders, they were killed by their own people in Africa. Some people in Africa did not support the idea or the movement of Pan-Africanism. So if we cannot believe in ourselves, amongst ourselves, how can we unite Africa? How can we talk of Africa? 55 countries. So I wish to conclude by saying that it's high time the proposers agree with me that reinstituting Pan-Africanism will not lead to socio-economic growth in Africa, but it will lead to chaos and problems in Africa. I conclude by saying it will still remain to be a dream that by reinstituting Pan-Africanism, Africa will grow economically. Thank you.
Tugi. I'm from the Upper Hill School, and I do not think the first speaker has introduced Pan-Africanism well, because I don't still understand what is Pan-Africanism.
To the proposition team, your question from the audience is, what is your stand, or what is the understanding of Pan-Africanism that your team is working with, such that we can all be on board on the same? Third proposer, you have 3 minutes. Your time starts now.
First of all, we'd like to appreciate you, Ryan, for your question. Indeed, it is quite good for you to even ask us, by the way, what is our stance on Pan-Africanism. Pan-Africanism is the idea that people of African descent have common interest and should be unified. So there's an aspect of common interest, and it's the people of African descent. We're talking about lack of respect on them for the democratic ideals. Now, in any country where there seems to be any sorts of power, if I may say, dictatorship, because of the kind of system that we are implementing, and accountability from other African leaders because of the common interest as we have as Pan-Africanists, then we'll be able to even have influence on the accountability system of the governance of African countries. Thereby, Pan-Africanism is going to promote social and economic growth because we know one of the inherent issues that we have as Africa is our leadership. And by mitigating leadership, we mitigate Africa for a better Africa, for the better of the people of Africa. Objectives and aims that Pan-Africanism held in the past was to unite all people of African origin, and you know unity is strength. That's why we cannot be the Alliance High School only by Leonard Asanga. The Alliance High School is built in all of us, and we come and refute all the points that the opposition has talked about. Talking about Pan-Africanism fought only for the African American states, that's invalid. In fact, we see the involvement of Kwame Nkrumah, as they said, people like Mobutu Sese Seko, people like Nelson Mandela and all the like. So that is invalid. Somali attacks invites all the chaos into African countries. Come on, we're going to be accountable as a whole. We will approach this as Africa, and this becomes a threat to Africa. Therefore, it becomes a threat to me as a Pan-Africanist. Let's take Pan-Africanism and use it for the glory of Africa. Leonard Asanga, thank you.
Third opposer, you have 3 minutes to make your case.
While I was sitting over there, I was asking myself if these young men over here are really Pan-Africanist, because all of them came on stage, but they were unable to even greet us. Are we growing our socio-economic? Are we enhancing our social relationship between you and the audience? Or are we instead reducing our relationship between you and the audience? A friend of mine has asked about what will lead to socio-economic development other than Pan-Africanism. We have investments. When we invest in particular businesses, when we invest in particular organizations such as the Fazil Chinoi organization, we will be able to enhance our socio-economic. For example, our very own President of Kenya, William Samoei Ruto, enhances or tells Kenyans to hustle for themselves. And if we Kenyans hustle for ourselves, we will be able to increase our economy on our own. Number 2, tourism. Tourism, other than Pan-Africanism, tourism will also lead to socio-economic growth. Why do I say tourism will lead to socio-economic growth? Because when tourists from different countries visit us as Kenya, we will be able to relate with the other country because they will have their embassy in Kenya. And in terms of economy, we are going to earn foreign exchange from these particular countries. Number 3, education. For socio-economic to develop, we must have education. How can you be able to come up with the idea of Pan-Africanism if you can't even educate people about Pan-Africanism? You know, you've come with the definition about Pan-Africanism, but I think the definition is not quite correct. Pan-Africanism is defined as the uniqueness and the spiritual unity of black people all around the world. All around the world. So you came here, first of all, gave us a fresh thing, and you didn't even unite us as Africans. Why couldn't you just give us at least one from one fresh to the WAA Boys High School? We see like, yeah, we are united, yeah. Let us change on that, please. We are talking about uniting us spiritually, and instead you have your own backgrounds, you have your own ethnic groups, and how can you be able to unite Africans? You know, sometimes I ask myself, if it is hard for a father and mother to decide the better of their children at home, how can we be able to resolve all the issues affecting Africa when we come together? Thank you.
Proposition, you have 1 minute for your closing submissions.
In this case, we have looked at Pan-Africanism as a way to unite all of us. I have shown you what I can give you. You are interested in it. I have given it to you. I have not only shown you what you cannot have. And in this case, uniting us as Africa, moving forward, you saying, giving the point on education and all that, we have mentioned that. And we are going to combat illiteracy in improved education and skills training, so that not only us will be giving you the fresh, but also you can give us that fresh at some point. Because at the end of the day, we all deserve to be fresh together as one. Therefore, let us look at Pan-Africanism as a means. Introduce your children not to fear, but what is possible. What is possible is for all of us to enjoy Pan-Africanism as Africa, as one. Therefore, again, good afternoon, WAA boys.
Opposition, 1 minute for your closing submissions.
Wow, wow, wow. It's obvious. Victory comes from the Almighty, especially to those who are determined. The proposer side are really funny because it is obvious it is unfair for what they have just done right now. They have only given us the speakers, but what of the audience? Remember, the audience are also part of this meeting, and they're also part of this session. So next time when you come to on the stage, remember to carry a box and distribute it. And unfortunately, they've also given us some orbit after one of our speakers has just claimed that they were being unfair. But on the start, they were unfair and they don't know what Pan-Africanism really means. I wish to say that Pan-Africanism cannot lead to socio-economic growth because it was there. And to the proposer side, it is fun. You are just telling us the aims and objectives of Pan-Africanism, but you have not stated to us the provisions or the organization, the benefit of the organization to Africa since it was established until its decline. I wish to conclude by saying we are the products of our past, but we don't have to be the prisoners of it. Merci beaucoup.
Alliance Boys, Baraza, as a first speaker, you defined the subject. What that definition didn't do to us, it didn't break it down. It was a high-level definition, very complex, if you ask me, but your colleague, Leonard, did very well to break it down in very simple language for us to understand what is Pan-Africanism and also to relate to the subject. So as a team, I think those two, you worked together on that. For Telvin, you brought the fun by pausing and chewing the gum and entertaining us. That shows creativity from my end. You also did a very good role to poke holes on what the opposers were talking about. You also provided solutions, but also didn't feel like those examples were relatable particularly. I also felt you had very good posture and presence on stage, so that was very excellent. And for Leonard, good examples, good start, good middle, good ending. Excellent explanation of the subject as well, like I started by saying. So I think the team seemed to have similar understanding of the subject, which there must be coherence within the team itself. So that was available for us to see. Thank you.
WAA boys, very spirited fight as well as opposers. Haron, I must say something to you as a first speaker. You know how you start your team matters big time, and as well you had some beating to take. We felt that you read too much, and there was no eye contact from where I sat, and but you had very good citations. So you want to be felt more because your style is needed as well when you're on the stage. Ali, in fact, if there was anything, I would give you a beautiful round of applause if I had a crowd within me, because you stood out for your team. Good cross-examination, and I felt that even the ending, you're very strong on what you did. Hussein, I have a question for you. I thought you're about to cross-examine the proposers when you greeted the people, probably to tell them they're Pan-Africans. emphasize on greeting. But you didn't. I mean, I thought that's what you said. When you came and said they are not greeting us, I thought you should have hammered it. That would have been a very good cross-examination, but now you let them fly. Anyway, I'm just giving you an example. Good examples as well, when education and all, but there's a challenge on your coherency to understand what are you saying. At some point I felt I was struggling with that, but fairly good audience engagement. What's the alternative if you're saying, and that's what the cross-examiners kept asking you there, what's the alternative? You were saying that we don't reinstitute Pan-Africans. What's then is the alternative? That wasn't answered from where I sit. But all the best to both teams.
WAA boys managed to make away with 66%. A round of applause for them. Alliance High School garnered 70%, making them the winners of this particular debate. That brings us to the end of this session. It was a delight to have you in the audience and you at home with us. Quick reminder, it only gets better, so do not touch that dial. I have been your host, Stephanie Oshera, and I will see you in the next one.